morning. Good morning. Good to see everyone again. You know, this morning, Facebook just reminded me almost 1 year ago, I was doing something uh, almost identical 1 year ago. All right. So what I wanted to say here is that time passed so fast. All right. And Regional has been doing all this free training almost more than 1 year. All right. Why not everybody, show appreciation to the regional team and put a 6 in the chat box, because they have been doing this for more than a year, right? It's not easy. It's not easy. All right, thank you everyone. Okay, before I begin, the last time I had a session, a similar session. The last time I come onto this session is on June 31st. June 31st. That was the last time I came on to do a session. Just wondering, anybody still remember what I was talking about? The last session I came on June 31st. Want to test some of your memory. Anybody? Nobody remember. So sad for me. Anybody? Market after MCO. Okay. Good market outlook, trend. Okay. Now what I did on, okay, yeah. So what I did on June 31st is basically, I was trying to, predict, right, what is going to happen. All right. So it's a little bit different with what I'll be doing today. Okay, let me just share screen. Okay, so today's session, I'll be talking about, the property market, the report and analysis for H1 2021. Now, basically, these are the data released by LPPAH almost 3 weeks ago. So almost 3 weeks ago. So the difference here is that for this session, we are basically looking at what has just happened in the recent past. All right, what has just happened recently. All right, so this is the difference, and I believe I've also done this a couple of times. Actually, do you know why is it important that we look at this data, or know a little bit about what has just happened? Anybody want to try? What is the objective by looking at this data? Anybody? There's actually two objectives. Okay, know the market trend. Anybody else? Guide us through. Okay, very good. So actually the two key objective is basically number one is to like what Susan and Eric said, it's to roughly know what is the market sentiment. All right, that is the objective number one. And objective number two, it's really for each of us to gauge how we were performing, right, against the market. All right, so this is the two objective. Okay, so I will begin today's session. So maybe a quick introduction. All right, my name is Wing. I co-own ACE platform together with Vivian. All right, we are in MC2, so I'm an associate director in MC2. Okay. Okay, let's go in. All right. So the first table that we look at is OPR. So what happened? What happened with the OPR for the last 2 years? So if you can see, we started 2020 with OPR at 3%, and for the last one whole year in 2021 until now, our OPR is at 1.75. All right. So it is almost at an all-time low in terms of OPR at the moment. And this table basically shows the loan application and the loan approval for the purchase of residential property. Okay, So if you can see first half of 2021, there is almost 180 billion worth of loan applications. All right. And out of this 180 billion, there is 63 billion loan approved. 63 billion loan approved. And if you can see, the approval rate is at 35.3%. All right, 35.3%. So if you look at this data, there is something very, very significant. If you look at the last 10 years, first half of 2021, there is 180 billion loan applied. If you look at the last 10 years, this is the highest. This is the highest ever loan applied for residential property. If you compare the first half from 2011 to 2021, 180 billion. And if you look at it, 63 billion approved is also the highest for the last 10 years. All right. And of course, if you can see, however, the approval rate of 35.3, it is almost one of the lowest for the last 10 years. But to me, this is not so important. But what is more important, if you can see, the number of loan approved for residential property is the highest the last 10 years. Okay. Now, this is for non-residential property. This is for non-residential property. You can see there is 45.9 billion loan applied, 15.7 loan approved with an approval rate of 34.4%. All right. So 45, so it's almost back to the non-COVID. If you compare to H1 2019, it's almost back to the non-COVID times. Okay. Now we first look at the house price index. Now house price index is basically to gauge how is the price of the house market. All right. So if you can see in Q2 2021, our house price index is at 197.9. Okay. Now if you can see, now first we look at the blue color line. The blue color line is basically trying to compare quarter to quarter. So if you see, if you compare Q1 2021 to Q2 2021, there is a drop of 1.6% in terms of house price index. Okay. However, if you do quarter to quarter comparison, this is not the first time we see a drop. All right, we see a drop here, 0.2%. We also see a drop here at 0.3%. However, quarter to quarter, 1.6, this is the highest drop so far in terms of house price index. In terms of quarter to quarter. All right. Now we look at the orange line. The orange line is to compare year to year. All right. If you see year to year, by comparing Q2 2021 to Q2 2020, we see a drop of 1.2%. We see a drop of 1.2%. Okay. Now this is the very first time for the last 10 years that we see a drop in terms of house price index when we compare it year on year. All right, so you can see previously 2016-17, we see a very good growth and the growth slowed down. And this is the very first time that we see a drop in house price index. Okay. Now, this is looking at by state. All right, how is the house price index performing by state by comparing year to year? So if you can see in Kuala Lumpur, Q2 2020, there is a 0.4% growth. In Q2 2021, there is it dropped by 5.2%. All right. And in Selangor, it dropped by 1.5%. All right. So if you can see across all the state, almost all the state is seeing a drop in terms of house price index, except for 3 states, which is Pahang, Terengganu, and also Sabah. All right, these are the 3 states that actually see a positive growth in house price index. Now, if you look at all the across all the states, which state is performing the best is, if you can see, is Kelantan. Although there is a slight drop, but you can see Kelantan is seeing a very healthy growth in terms of house price index. Okay. And this is based on the different type of property. All right, so if you can see, the dark blue is landed terrace house, purple color is high rise, green color is semi-D, and then the orange color is detached. bungalow. So if you can see across all the different category, we are seeing a drop in terms of the house price index year to year. The only difference is the terrace house, although we also see a drop, but it is still in a positive range. All right. However, all the other categories we are seeing a drop in terms of house price index. Okay. Now this is talking about house price index. Now I want to ask one question just to test everybody's understanding or still remember what I said previously. Is house price important for our real estate business? Is house price important for our real estate business? Can put into the chat box. Okay. Well, so far I'm seeing yes. Okay, very good. Miko say no. What about anybody else? What about the rest? Is house price important for our real estate business? I said wrong already. Now nobody there to reply. Okay. Okay. The answer is no. The answer is no. Which is why my question is not is towards our real estate business. Now whether the prices is going up or down, it really doesn't matter to our real estate business. Okay. House price index is the house price is not important. Okay. Now why I believe I go in details a session which I did last year. You all can look at the video. All right. But what is more important for our real estate business is what I will be what we will be looking at next is basically transaction. Okay, what is important for our real estate business is transaction. Okay, house price is actually not so important to our real estate business. Okay, so we move on and see how is the transaction in Malaysia for first half of 2021. All right, so if you can see, there is a total of almost 140,000 transactions in first half 2021 with a total value of 62 billion. All right, so if you can see, let's focus on the transaction. 140,000, 65.8%, bulk of it, 92,000 transaction is in the residential market, followed by the agriculture, 18.9%, and followed by commercial, 10,000 transaction at 7.5%. All right, so this is the breakdown in terms of the 140,000 transaction. Bulk of it is still at the residential market. Okay, now if you look at the value, total 62 billion, all right, out of which 55.6%, 34.5 billion is in the residential market, followed by the commercial, 10.9 billion, with a total of 17.6% of the total value. All right, so this is in terms of transaction and the volume, this is how this is the performance in the first half of 2021. Okay, now remember I said, you know, when we look at this data, one of the objective is really for us to gauge, you know, how we did compared to the market. All right, now I know this is not a fair comparison, but it's just for us to benchmark. All right, so let's just assume there is 40,000 rand. There is 40,000 rand in Malaysia. Okay, now this one I plucked from the sky just based on the rand pack number. Okay, just let's say assume 40,000 rand. All right, so if you take 139,754 and divide by 40,000, each rand, right, you should be able to get 3.49 transaction in the first half of the year. All right, 3.49 transaction in the first half of the year. All right, and if you look at this value, all right, just assume 3% commission. Like I say, just assume 3% commission. All right, and you divide it across the 40,000 rand. All right, each rand should make about 46,500 in the first half of 2021. All right, so you take this number, 3.5 transaction in first half 46,500 in terms of commission for first half 2021. All right. So you can use this number and see whether are you beating the market or are you falling behind the market. All right. So you can use this to gauge how you were doing in first half of 2021. All right. So we move on. So this is the volume of transaction. All right. Comparing the first half of 2021 with the last 5 years. So if you can see, if you compare year to year, we grew from 115,000 to 139,000. There is a 21% growth year to year. All right. But if you compare back the last 5 years, we are still not back to the pre-COVID times. Okay, but we are, to me, I think we are doing the market is doing a good job. All right. And if you look at the value of transaction, first half of 2020, there's only 46, almost 47 billion, but first half 2021, we are almost at 62 billion. All right, there's a 32.1% growth in terms of value of transaction. So if you compare the last 5 years, although we are not back to pre-COVID times, but we are almost there. All right, we are almost there. All right. So if you can look at this chart, we are recovering very well. If you look at year to year. Okay, this is a volume of transaction by region. All right. So if you look at throughout Malaysia, doesn't matter it's a central, southern, northern, east coast or East Malaysia, we see a positive growth. Comparing year to year, we see a positive growth throughout Malaysia. All right. No part of Malaysia is being spared. So at the whole of Malaysia, we see growth in terms of volume. And this is based on the different price point below 300,000, 3 to 500, 500 to 1 million, and above 1 million. We also see a growth throughout all the different price point in terms of transaction. Okay, but here one thing to note here is you can see above 1 million, we are seeing the highest growth in terms of transaction, 38.4%. All right. So, okay, now we break it down. Now we look at residential alone in terms of the volume of transaction based on the different price point. So if you can see, there is growth as well. Okay, and if you look at here, the above 1 million, there is a 59.7% growth in terms of volume of transaction in the residential market. All right. And this is commercial. There's growth throughout all the different price point. The highest growth is below the 300,000 range. Okay, so this is how in terms of transaction, right? How it's performing for the residential and commercial market, comparing year to year. Okay. So this is the transaction volume for the residential market. Okay, this is the transaction volume for the residential market. So first half of 2021, there is 92,000 transactions. Compared to first half 2020, there is 75,000. So if you can see, there is a 22% growth. There is a 22% growth in terms of transaction. All right. We are almost back to the non-COVID days. All right, but we are recovering very well in terms of residential market. And this is in terms of value, 34.5 billion worth of transaction. So compared to first half of 2020, so you can see it grew from 25 billion to 34 billion. There is a 34.7% growth. We are almost back to the non-COVID days. First half of 2019, this is no COVID, we were doing 34.6. The first half of 2021, we are doing 34.5. All right. So in terms of residential market, in terms of value, we are doing very well. All right. Now, this is in terms of the new launches and also the sales performance. Okay, this is more towards the primary market. So if you can see in terms of the unit launch, which is a green color bar, all right, there is a decline from first half 2020 to first half 2021. All right, the number of units launched reduced. Okay, however, the sales performance, which is the red color line, if you can see, it improved. All right, it improved from 12.9% all the way to 24.7%. Okay. Now this is the unsold data. Okay, unsold data for the residential market. So the yellow color line is an overhang, which means it is unsold completed. The blue color line is unsold under construction. The green color line is unsold not constructed. So if you can see the trend, it's almost flat. All right, so there is not much movement. So which means that there are units sold. There are also units that which is unsold that came in as well. Okay, so we are flat for the residential units. Okay, now this is the same data, but looking at based on the major state in the first half of 2021. All right, so we look at the overhang first. The overhang, the most number of overhang residential units, so you can see is in Johor. All right, is in Johor, followed by Penang. So there is a 6,600 residential unit unsold completed in Johor and 5,000 units unsold completed in Penang. All right, and in Selangor and KL, there's about 3,700 and 3,300 units. All right. So this is the next one. This blue is unsold under construction. The most number unit is in Selangor, 13,000 units, followed by Perak at 12,000 units. Now this unsold under construction is, to me, I think not so much to worry about. It's actually an opportunity for us. Okay, it's unsold, but still under construction. Okay, and the dark blue is unsold, not constructed. Yeah, this is even not so critical. All right, but if you look at it generally, if people talking about overhang in the residential market, it is mostly in Johor. Okay, the impact is not so great in KL and Selangor. Okay, this is looking at it's more towards the primary market. Okay, this is the yellow color line is completed. The blue color line is a start construction, and the green color line is basically the new plan supply. So if you can see, first half of all the years is almost lower. All right. So first half of 2021, we see similar trend, and only the blue color line, which is a start construction in first half 2021, we see there is a increase. All right. So there is more construction. There is more projects starting construction. Okay. Now we move into the commercial transaction. Now this is the commercial data. Or before I move into the commercial data, any questions so far? Any questions so far? Okay, or maybe if you are still with me, give me a 1 in the chat box. Or if you are totally lost, you can give me a 2 so I can gauge how is everybody doing. Okay, good. Everybody is a 1. Okay, then I will move on. Okay, so I'll move on. So we will move into the commercial data. This is the commercial transaction data. Okay, so if you see compare first half 2020 to first half 2021, it increased from 8,100 units to 10,400 units. There is an increase of 28.5% in terms of transaction volume. All right, so you can see we are almost back to the pre-COVID days, right? And if you look at in terms of the value, it grew from 8.5 billion to 10.9 billion. All right. So you can see there is a 28.4% growth. All right. So if you look at in terms of the value of the transaction, even before the pre-COVID times, we were seeing a drop in terms of value. But this is the very first time, first half of 2021, we are seeing a reverse in the trend. Okay. Now, this is a service apartment volume of transaction. It grew from 1,400 units to 1,900 units. There is a 33.4% growth. All right. So if you can see, there is also a reverse in trend for service apartment. And this is the value. First half of 2020 is 970 million. It grew to 1.2 billion. There is a 23.7% growth in terms of value of transaction. All right. Now, service apartment, first half 2019 to 2021, if you look at the overhang, okay, we look at the overhang. There is an increase in the overhang unit in terms of a service apartment. Right now, there is 24,000 units, which is completed and unsold. Okay. If you look at under construction, 42,000 units, and not constructed, it has 6,600 units. Okay. So this is the there is a slight increase in terms of unsold completed for service apartment or service residence. Okay. Now this is looking at different state. Now this is looking at different state. So so if you can see, this is a service apartment based on the major state in first half of 2021. So we look at the overhang, which is the yellow color bar. Okay, yellow color bar. So you can see the highest is in Johor, 16,500 units, service apartment which is completed and unsold. All right. So if you can see service apartment, the overhang issue is the biggest issue is in Johor. All right, it's still the same. So if you look at service apartment for KL and Selangor, there's actually not much. Of course, there is 4,500 unsold in KL and 2,000 in Selangor, but in terms of the percentage, all right, so it's actually not much. All right. And if you look at the unsold under construction, KL, there is a 17,000 units, followed by Selangor, 10,000 units. All right. So if you can see, there is plenty things for us to sell. All right. So if people talk about, you know, overhang for service apartment, right, you can confidently say that, you know, it is really impacting the Johor state. It's not so much in the KL and also the Selangor state. Okay. Okay, this is looking at the service apartment based on the completion start and new plan supply. All right, first half 2019 to first half 2021. So if you can see the blue color line, there are more service apartment which is currently start construction. All right, there is 21,000 units that begin construction. In terms of completion, in first half of the year, there is 4,000 unit completed. And in terms of new plan supply, so far, if you can see, developer is more taking a back seat for now. All right. Okay, this is the industrial data. Okay. This is the industrial data. Oh, by the way, by the rate I'm going to complete very soon. So if you got any question, you can put into the chat box, or if you got any part where you want me to, you know, go a little bit in depth, can let me know in the chat box. All right. So this is the industrial data. I'm almost at the end already. This is the industrial data based on volume of transaction. So you can see first half 2020, there is 1,900 transaction. First half of 2021, there is 2,500. So you can see that there is a 29.4% growth in terms of industrial transaction. In terms of value of transaction, for industrial, there is also a growth from 5.4 billion to 6.4 billion, 19.8% growth. This is in terms of value of transaction. Okay, this is to look at the overhang. So if you can see the unsold overhang under construction and not constructed, it is almost, for the overhang, there is a slight increase. There is currently 1,300 units unsold completed, whereas for under construction, not constructed, is almost flat. Okay. This is the looking at the supply and also the future. This is looking at the future. So there is 143 units completed construction. In terms of starting construction and new supply, you can see that there is there is an uptrend. All right, so it's a reverse based on the commercial and also the residential data. All right, so you can see it's more optimistic in the industrial segment in terms of the future. All right, actually, that it's all I have. The data that I have prepared for the first half of 2021. All right. Okay, there's a question from Joanne. Interpretation of this data. Okay, interpretation of this data. Okay, how many want to know what are my thoughts on this data? All right. Yeah, of course, right now I'm just presenting the data as it is. All right. What is actually more important is actually how we interpret the data. All right. Interpretation of the data. Okay, how many want to okay, for the interpretation of data, I only can focus in the residential market, right? Because it's the market that I work on. All right, for commercial and industrial, I'm really not into it. So which is why I don't interpret the data. Okay. Anybody want to know how I interpret the data? Can give me a 3 in the chat box. Okay. I seldom do it in this type of forum because number one is really my personal opinion. All right, and number two, I think my interpretation of data actually worth some money lah. So which is why I'm very reluctant to do it for free. But today Joanne asked, so I will do it. Okay, I'll just show you my interpretation. Okay, now residential data, if you look at it, right, in terms of volume of transaction, there is a 21% growth. Now, okay, before I give my interpretation, now I'm not asking you all to change any of your direction based on this data. All right, it's just based on what is currently happening right now. All right, so I am not in any way trying to change any of your direction in terms of your real estate business. Okay, but if you look at the residential market, all right, in terms of transaction, it grew by 21%. Okay, but if you look at the value, it grew by 32.1%. Okay, so now what this data shows here is, if you can see, those transactions above 1 million, all right, that is where the most number of growth is. It grew by 38.4%. All right, what I'm trying to say here is that from the data, it shows that the higher value residential units, there is more transaction. Okay, there's more transaction for those higher price point residential unit. All right, so if you can see above 1 million, there is 38.4%. As compared to below 300,000, there is 13%. All right, and if you can see now, solely this is residential. This is residential only. So if you can see above 1 million, the number of transactions grew by almost 60%. Almost 60%. All right. So which is why if you can see our mega agents, focusing in the higher value market, they are doing very well. All right, they are doing very well. Okay. But having said that, I'm not asking you all to go and focus into the property value above 1 million. I'm not saying that. So I'm just saying that, this year, the higher value property is performing better compared to the lower value residential unit. Okay. Now, if I ask anybody want to guess why the higher end residential unit is doing better compared to the lower end segment? Anybody want to guess? Can let me know in the chat box why. Owner throw price. Okay, Maurice mentioned owner throw price. RPGT tax. Okay, bank rate lowers. Okay, job security. Okay, upgrading. Okay. Yeah, I think Joe. Okay. Now this is just my perspective. I think it's along the line like what Joanne mentioned. Um, the B40s and the lower M40s, during this period of time, they are worrying about putting food on the table. They are worrying about their job security. They are worrying about whether maybe some of them have no job. Maybe some of them has got pay cut. All right. So which is why the B40s and the lower M40s, they are not so into buying a house. Whereas for the higher end market, the T20s, they are not so impacted during this period. So which is why, because of like what Maurice mentioned, there is a adjustment in terms of pricing. So which is why these T20s are getting into the market. All right. So this is just my perspective why the higher price residential unit is doing better compared to the lower price unit. All right. This is just solely my personal interpretation. All right. Okay, Tina got a question. We are in the fourth quarter. What is the projection? Okay, Tina is asking a crystal ball question. Okay. Maybe I ask everyone, what is everyone's thoughts about the second half of 2021? Of course, the data is not released yet. Okay. Now let's just see what everybody think about the Joanne, okay, what you all think about the second half of the year? Okay, since we got a bit of time here, all right, let's project. All right, let's say everybody got a crystal ball. What is your projection for the second half of 2021? Anybody want to try? Market will move, market is hot. Okay, Joanne, I think it will slowly shift to a seller's market. Okay, now this is just solely my thoughts. This is just solely my thoughts. If you look at Q3 2021, I am predicting that we might see a slight drop. Reason is because that is the time when we see the peak in terms of COVID-19 cases. Right, that is the peak where we see our COVID-19 cases, and that is when we go into lockdown again. All right, but I'm very optimistic with Q4 2021. All right, like what Justin is saying, market is hot. Like what Jimmy say, market is moving. Like what Joanne say, it is slowly shifting to the seller's market. All right, so I think Q4 2021, it will be a good quarter. So for second half of 2021, I think it will balance off. All right, so which is why I think second half of the year, we will not do so badly. And I think Joanne can replace my, I think Joanne can take over what I do already. All right, now Joanne mentioned we will be slowly shifting to the seller's market. Okay, now this is just my perspective. Okay, this is my perspective. If you are looking at matured market, market like, USJ, Subang, PJ, Puchong, KL, all right, if you are looking at matured market, and if you are looking at landed properties in matured market, all right, Joanne mentioned that we are slowly shifting to the seller's market. My thoughts are, in this market, we are already in the seller's market. All right, this is just my thought. For matured market, especially landed property, we are already in the seller's market. All right. Anybody disagree with me? I mean, these are all personal perception, how we interpret the market, how we interpret the data. Okay, feel free to disagree with me. All right, these are just my thoughts on what is actually happening. All right, so which is why, like I say, this data is the past data. All right, so what happened in the past is already the past. So which is why it's really just for us to gauge how we are doing. All right, what is really more important is how we look at the future. How we place ourselves to capture the future market. I think this is more important. All right. Overpriced. Joanne mentioned overpriced property can sell now. Okay. What my perception is, if you look at the house price index, okay, if you look at the house price index, year to year, we are seeing a drop in terms of house price. So which is why to me, I think the higher price point why is moving is because owner is more flexible. But then the below the 1 million landed house, I think the value is holding very well, right? The value is holding very well. I think if your buyer is still waiting for those below 1 million landed house for a price drop, I think it's a bit tough. All right. Susan mentioned inventory is low. I agree with that. If you are doing landed house in matured market, inventory is low. All right. This is what I can observe. This is what I hear from Ren as well. Lynn mentioned sellers have holding power. Correct. The top M40s and the T20s, they have got the holding power. All right. So they have got no issues. But for those impacted by COVID, then it's a different story. Okay, so you need to advise them accordingly and help them to get out of the problem that they are facing. Jasmine asked me, how do you look at 2022? That is too far ahead. But if you ask me right now, I'm always very optimistic with the future. All right, things will only get better. All right. Joanne asked if we are already in the seller's market, what do you think is our immediate strategy as an agent? To me, the strategy is the same. Okay, let me think how to answer this question. Okay, of course, a buyer's market, you have a buyer's market strategy, all right, and the owner's market, you have the owner's market strategy, all right. So you just need to deploy the right strategy, all right. Maybe at a high level, I think how you talk to the buyer and how you talk to the seller, you need to fine tune a little bit, because the conversation is very different when you are in the buyer's market and also when you are in the seller's market, all right. So depending on where the market is right now, you just need to fine tune how you talk to these buyers and how you talk to these sellers. Right. Yeah, I might not be answering your question, Joanne, but because that question, it might take up another session altogether. So I might not want to confuse everybody here in the call, right? But just deploy. It will not change very much. It's just it's a different set of strategy when you're in the buyer's market and also in the seller's market, right? Okay, maybe I stop share. Any other questions so far? Basically, this is in terms of the slides, right? This is what I have, right? Okay. Now we are in the awkward part again. I mean, if there's no further question, I mean, this is what I have prepared for today. All right. So I think to me, things will only get better. All right, things will only get better. So really, it's the time to work hard and put in all the effort and time that you can possibly put in. Julius asking where I get this data. This data, if you go NAPIC, you can just go NAPIC, you search the data, or the data are all there, right? I just extract all this graph and put it into this slide. Okay, so you can go and download their PDF. They have got a very detailed explanation there. NAPIC, NAPIC. All right, so you go search for NAPIC, the data are all there. All right, I never make up any of this data. All right, I just present it as it is. I never alter a single bit. All right. Okay. Yeah. Lynn, you want to do what you need to do? I'm done.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thank you, Wing. Thank you for all the time to prepare this and yeah, sharing with us your insights to the property market, right? So I always enjoy Wing's session, and somehow I'm also always on duty during his session. So
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
yeah. Yeah, National Consumer Campaign is still ongoing every Thursday. There's a new touch point. You can use this to send out to your clients, right? And yeah, it's already posted, prepared for you. Just go to Workplace, download it, and send it out to your clients. Okay, so that's all for this week. And I think, yeah, trainings are only twice a week now. So I believe this session has been very informative. And thank you, Wing, for your time again. And thank you all for taking your time off to join us. And then we will see you next week and have a good week ahead.
Yeah.